And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the interview room. It's great to see everybody. Got a great show ahead for you tonight. Where are you from? Where you at? Man, everybody's in the house tonight. We've got a lot of information we're going to cover. Let's see where we got. Vermont, Maryland, Mississippi. Love our folks in Mississippi. Hershey, Pennsylvania, where they have all of the street lights that look like little Hershey kisses. So appropriate. Kentucky, North Carolina, Michigan, New Zealand. How are you, New Zealand? Where else? Boston's in the house. Detroit, Illinois, Ireland. Hi. Indiana, Kentucky again. It's great having you all here. Man, oh man. It's so neat. And thank you so much for pushing us over the big 300. We're so grateful for that, and we appreciate you so very much. We only ask one thing on this channel, and that's you just hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and I guess they have a new feature now where you can share this and hype it and all the above. And hello to all of our friends over on Facebook and on Twitter, where this is also being broadcasted. So we are so grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's get right into this tonight. New York's in the house, I see as well. South Carolina. This is awesome. We have so much information we're going to go over tonight. I was talking to Karen about, some of the things that I've been noticing recently on this case. And I just kept going back. Those of you who have been with me from the beginning, know that sometimes my brain starts going in a certain direction. I guess as John Lamb would say, it's tough to let go until all the rocks are flipped over and everything's looked at very clearly. And this is one of those cases for me. Sometimes I have learned in my experience that it's the simple yet obvious clues that present themselves. And if you think about these types of cases where everybody is like, oh, it's so confusing. It's all this and all that. And if you think of this gigantic puzzle sitting on a table somewhere, and I like using this analogy because it's pretty easy to understand. What a murder or a missing person or anything like that, like this, if you think of the suspect coming into a gigantic puzzle on the table and just flipping the table over, like the money changers, and stuff just goes everywhere. All right. Well, if you try to assemble this puzzle from the inside out, you'll never get there. A lot of investigators do that. And I've learned over the years that that's not how you assemble a homicide case. What you have to do is you have to find the edges first. and those square cuts first on a puzzle, and put those together. And once you put those together, then you know, you have what it appears to be a picture. So if you assemble the frame and not try to create and paint the picture, then you're much better off in solving the crime. And so in this particular show tonight, we're going to cover a whole bunch of things. But this is an angle that nobody has really come after this thing. And I was talking to Karen, like I said a moment ago, last night in depth. And I was like, I just think there's something that we're missing, that the public's missing, but the sheriff has had it for quite some time. And I'm going to go back real quickly through a couple of principles. And that principle is always, you'll notice the FBI is going back now because of the rains, because of the monsoons. And there's this principle that says, hey, if this is, maybe she's buried somewhere because the note said she's buried somewhere, maybe Nancy is closer than everybody thinks. And so they've gone back to see if anything has been disturbed or if new odors or scents, have been kicked up. And the one thing, though, that concerns me is I've not seen any type of cadaver dogs or any search and rescue teams running dogs up and around the property again. Maybe they're going to go back. I would go back. I mean, I went back for many times on people that ultimately the dog got the scent and hit on it, who were buried. And, it just took a little bit of nature helping you out. And next thing you know it, boom, you get a cadaver dog that hits and you're good to go. At that point, it turns into an archaeological dig and you bring in a forensic anthropologist and, investigators just kind of step back and let them do their thing. Let the experts that know how to do that stuff come in and do it. So I would encourage the sheriff, if you're listening tonight, to run over with your dogs again in that area. You don't need a search warrant for that. You just run them through the backyard, et cetera, in and around the neighborhood again. Because remember the night Brian Enton was out there and the news crews, they were, all those coyotes up there by Annie's house, and they were all standing out front while the cops were inside. The sheriff's department was inside processing that house. Well, let me remind you real fast.
All right, I just wanted to give you guys a little update. Not much has changed here outside Annie Guthrie's house. There's, I think, 3 law enforcement cars. We're not sure what agency they're from. There's this pickup truck, there's an SUV, and then there's another SUV behind there.
Okay, that one. And here's another angle of it that Brian brought up, where they're coming out with bags, and you can see, they're getting back in their trucks. He had just put the bag inside the truck. That other video they just had up shows it to the very end. But so they were over there processing that house, and I have said from the very beginning, okay, wait a minute, something doesn't look right in River City. Remember in Napoleon Dynamite where Uncle Rico reaches into the box and he tells him, if you buy this 24-piece set, that I'm going to go ahead and throw in this, and he reaches in and he pulls out the ship, and the wife looks over at the husband and goes, I want that. And this is one of those things where this is a situation where, that kind of video like this, I want that. I want that because something's cooking here. You don't just arbitrarily go out in the middle of the night. And even Brian was stunned because he says on his own, reporting that they were inside of the house taking photographs, and it was obvious what they were doing. You could see the flashes, and all the media was standing outside, including the YouTubers, and they were all watching this thing go down. But nobody asked why, or nobody said why. And so I started asking why, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I wanted to know, why is this timeline the way it is? I also want to know and explain to you what the rules are in relationship to some of the things that we see clearly in front of us. And then I've got a challenge, and we'll hear about that as we go along here. But first, let's just kind of go over real fast the timeline, and then I'm going to jump into tonight's show about search warrants and who's been, who hasn't been, and then throw something at you guys. And I want your comments. I want to hear what you guys are thinking. And I'm not going to pull an Uncle Rico where I'm going to throw a steak and knock Napoleon off the bike with with Pedro. So, okay, here's the current timeline. 9:48, we know she's dropped off. Now, we heard earlier we've heard two different things. We've heard both of them dropped her off. The family, we saw that on Sheriff Snanos. He uses that, connects it together, the family. And then, of course, 9:48, and then the garage door closes at 9:50. We do not have a data point for the next morning. I'm not going to beat that tonight. 1:47, her doorbell camera is disconnected manually by porch guy with the weeds. Obviously, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, doing it that way, but so far he's been successful. The next one is 2:12. A security software detects movement. What the heck does that mean? But no video was saved due to lack of active subscription. Well, we know that's not the case because Kash Patel, pulled the rabbit out of his hat by meeting with the Google executives, and they just happened to have this video that we've now seen. But I had no idea what, software detects movement. What software, where, what kind, again, he, remember the part in Napoleon Dynamite where Earl, they're drinking, the eggs and the orange juice, and they're getting paid in pennies. And they ask Earl, I don't want to get a copyright violation, so I'm not going to play it. But if you want to hear my opinion of what Nano sounds like, just go listen to Earl describe, across over the mountain, over the mountain over there. Okay, that's the sheriff in terms of how he lays things out. It's just gibberish, right, Sheriff?
And we still need to know what you know, because there's something out there that we don't know.
Now, if he doesn't sound like that character in Napoleon Dynamite, I don't know who does or who doesn't. Anyway, so okay, so that said, we 2:12, the security software, 2:28, her pacemaker monitor app disconnects from her phone, a key indicator of when she may have been taken, according to the authorities. So this is, we're kind of nailing it down here because they've nailed it down. Right now, one thing that's really interesting here is I've put 11 a.m. here. I'm still sticking by this because this is what, Mumble said. When Earl said the family got there at 11, and he said it on the very first night around 9:30 in the evening because they had a 10 o'clock hit on the news. He said the family got to the house around 15-ish. As we've talked about that, Earl changed that the next morning to 11:56. So we have a 56-minute jump. I'm not going to go into that tonight, but I think that's important to understand. The first 911 call comes in at 12:03. So if we were to take Mumble's word for it, 11:56 to 12:03, and we know how reliable he is, then that's really about 7-8 minutes on a really expanded view. So in 7-8 minutes, you get a narrative that says everybody searched the home, everybody called the hospitals, 911 was called, and Nancy was definitely not a walk away when the first deputies get on the scene. The first deputies get on the scene at 12:18 in the afternoon. Now, I know that the homicide guys got there at 2 o'clock, 1400. I know this for a fact. Trust me on that one, because I talked to some people, people that work there. Let me just be clear. My sources are very clear about what time homicide got on the scene. And then, of course, now we get into all of the narratives about, the search and rescue. But we've heard earlier on, Adami's channel, where she talks about, Juanita's channel, where she talks about, all of that radio traffic. And that's earlier in the afternoon. That's around 12 something going on. So they definitely knew about the blood at that point. And on February 3rd, the investigators confirm, yes, in fact, that was Nancy's blood. Now, the way they did that is, remember, the sheriff said that their machine, their rapid DNA machine, was down. And so they sent it over to Phoenix. Phoenix's rapid DNA machine was up. And I've explained that a couple times, but for those of you who have never heard this before, there is a machine, it's called Andy, and it's a rapid DNA machine that you can take a swab from blood and you can put it into this rapid DNA machine. And if you have some type of other DNA, it will do a cursory evaluation of whether it's human, and then it will tell you, just kind of give you a window into if it's a match to the type of blood that could be on the porch. Let's say they got a swab from the shirt. Remember the blue shirt that's sitting out there? So you take both of those swabs and the machine will tell you if they're in the ballpark. And then, of course, you can send it off to other swabs to other labs for a more definitive. But so that's where he came out on February 3rd and said, yes, we know for a fact that's Nancy's blood. Okay, that's good. February 4th, the first video is released. And then, of course, February 5th, the media outlets start getting the ransom notes, etc. But in between all of this, there were some key developments. And what were those key developments? Well, there were some cars seized. The first car that was seized, and we have a total of 3 at this point. And that's what we're going to really talk about tonight. Because not only was the sheriff's department out at the house taking stuff out of the house,
but they've definitely been in the house taking photos. Like, there's no question about that, because we've seen the flashes, and we have some of the flashes on camera. And the interesting thing is they've been in different parts of the house taking photos. So we saw them over on this side. But then
okay, so Brian's, he's Johnny on the spot here, out in front of the house reporting for News Nation. And he's up there going, hey, they're inside that house and they're taking photographs. There was some thought process that maybe it was, alternate light sources. We used to call it an ALS, not the disease. And God bless those who are struggling through that. But an ALS is an alternate light source. And what it is, it's basically a box with a wand and it's got a laser. And you can spray chemicals, luminol or Blue Star, all kinds of different chemicals. And all the investigators, you get these really cool looking, yellow glasses. And it basically, everything starts to glow. And once you do that, once you start seeing things glowing, then, you can either photograph it or you can swab it. You can do all kinds of things, to forensically collect it as potential evidence. Now, we've not heard anything about any items that have been collected at Annie's house. However, what we have heard from the sheriff most recently is the words, "We have a lot of DNA," or "We have a lot of items we can check for DNA." Well, that's a really interesting comment. And so I started asking myself, and which was the catalyst for tonight's program, well, in my experience, where do we get DNA? Well, we get them from a couple of different places. And in this case, we have a house that was searched, 2 houses, actually 4 houses. Carlos as well, his car, or excuse me, Luke's house, 3 houses. We have multiple cars, and we have multiple cars that were seized. Now, what's interesting here is the Carlos guy, his house was checked out, but Luke's house was also checked out by the FBI, the SWAT team and the evidence response team, and they came in with a federal search warrant. However, Pima County had their own search warrant, and their search warrant was for the vehicle that dropped Nancy Guthrie off. And what I'm going to do is talk to you tonight why this is so important. I'm going to give you the law and the rules that the Pima County Sheriff's Office has to operate under, and everybody that walked out of that house with a paper bag has to follow these rules. And anybody that put a chain on a car and pulled it up onto a flatbed and drove it to an evidence facility has to follow these rules. So these rules tonight are in play. This is the playbook that I'm going to give you tonight. And here's the big elephant in the room. Nobody is asking about the receipt that's mandated by law. And I'm going to ask tonight about that. It requires an itemized receipt, as we all know, a la Koberger, all of any search warrant I've ever executed. You have to give it not only back to the court, but you have a certain amount of time to execute that search warrant, and then you have to return it back to the court, or excuse me, you have to give one to the person that's the property that you're searching. So it requires a detailed itemized receipt for any property seized under a search warrant. And these are the statutes in Arizona. So it's 133919A. And anybody can go look these up. These are the requirements for every search warrant in the state of Arizona. And they got a search warrant for the RP's cars. The first person's on the scene, Annie and Tommaso's car, the blue Honda CRV. And I've been asking about that car forever, knowing about this, but I figured now's the time. Well, once you search something, you've got to return that warrant. And you have to put your hand up and you have to tell the judge, okay, Your Honor, this is what I've done. And you have to do that. You have to execute the warrant within 5 days. So let's say they impounded A&T's car within that 5-day rule after they got the search warrant. Well, then they have to return the car. within 5 days. That is the Arizona statute requirement. And there's only a couple of ways that would extend that. So you have to, once you execute this search warrant, you have to say to the person who owns the car, all right, here's the itemized receipt and the itemized list of everything we took out of that car. And you can do one of two things, but this is the rule under 133919A of the Arizona Penal Code. Either A, you have to present it in person to the person whose property you're searching, i.e., either Annie or Tommaso, whoever the registered owner of that car is, and you say, here's your receipt. These are all the items we took out of that car. Or if there's nobody present, then you can leave that receipt. If it's a home, it's a vehicle, or if it's a premise, you leave that receipt there too. Now, here's the interesting part. The blue Honda CRV was towed by Pima County Sheriff's Office, and it was brought in to be processed. So was Nancy's Subaru. So don't get them confused. So was Luke's Range Rover. All three of those vehicles were given a receipt. Nancy's at her house, under her house, probably her search warrant. They put on the receipt one Subaru. But the interesting thing about the RP's car here is they held it so long. Now, the rules are in Arizona, only a court can delay why a piece of evidence is held for further processing unless it's put into evidence. And then you can hold it forever. So I started asking myself, I said, well, wait a minute. They have this receipt. And they know exactly what the cops took out of it and what they found or didn't find. And I'm thinking, well, wow. Did the court give them an exception? Because you have, remember, how many days do you have? You have 5 days to execute the warrant, and then you have 3 business days to get back to the court, the receipt. So let's say it was put into evidence on the 7th. So you had up until the 12th to execute the warrant, and then you had up to the 15th to get that receipt back to the court. And then the court can decide whether or not there would be an extension, which is down there in bullet point number 3 and number 2. But these are the only 3 rules. Safety or an investigative risk, meaning it could be held much longer. Reasonable cause to believe a delay is necessary to protect a person's safety or to prevent flight, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, or harm to the investigation. So the judge could say to the officer, the detective, who would be the affiant, well, why do you want to keep this car? Well, Your Honor, we're processing it. We don't have any lab results back yet. And we believe this is the last place Nancy Guthrie was seen. Okay, who owns the car? Well, the reporting party, the people that called. Did you give them a receipt for the car? Yes, Your Honor, we did. Okay, so they have a receipt, yes. Item number 2, limited seizure authority. The warrant bars seizure of tangible property, wire or electronic communications, or stored information unless the court finds the seizure reasonably necessary. All right, detective. So you're waiting for the processing of additional evidence. That's correct, Your Honor. All right. Then put it into evidence and give it a number. We'll do that. Now, item number 3 here is the warrant sets a reasonable period for serving the receipt after the execution, and the extension requires a new application and a judicial finding, meaning, Your Honor, we want to keep this car as long as we can. However, we're getting pressure from the outside. There's phone calls coming in, lawyers, public relations firms. It just doesn't look right. So we'd like to keep it. Well, I'm not sure. And now the court can make a ruling, not the police. This is an interesting piece of Arizona law. The court's going to say, okay, these 5 things here. The officer must return the warrant, number 1, which, by the way, they have a warrant for that car, for the Honda. Number 2, they have to meet the requirement, again, of returning it back to the family, the written inventory. What did you find? So do you realize if they found blood or what appears to be blood or anything in that car, they handed that back to the reporting party in the form of a receipt. It's kind of like Barry Morphew getting Suzanne's bones when they recovered her body because he was next to kin. Remember that problem? The medical examiner's office was required by law to return Suzanne Morphew's remains to his family, i.e. her daughters. And so the guy that killed her actually gets her remains back. You can't make this stuff up. But that's what happened. So in this case, they seized the car under a warrant, meaning they had probable cause. And by the way, I've tried to get the warrant, and it's locked up. They are not releasing any of it. But I think in the press conference that the family will do one day, they're gonna release the receipt to show that the sheriff cleared them. I'm sure that's going to happen, right, Sheriff?
Know all the things we know, and we still need to know what you know because there's something out there that we don't know.
Right. No, they didn't give consent for the car. I know that for a fact. They gave consent for the house, but not the car. I guarantee it. Now, the next piece of this puzzle, according to the statute, is a court can make the inventory sheet public. In this case, obviously, they're not going to. And that's number 3. And number 4 here is the affiant, i.e. the lead investigator, has to go back in with this inventory sheet to the judge and say, Your Honor, this is all the stuff we found in Brian Koberger's apartment, or this is all the stuff we found in one blue Honda CRV. And we took all this property. Here you go. And now the court can do one of 2 things. Number 5, the court can mail back to the affected party. Remember the guy came down to the mailbox with gloves on and was collecting all the mail? I don't know. Is it possible that a receipt from the court, i.e. a completed signed signature from the court could have been sitting in that mailbox, because the magistrate now has to deliver a copy of that inventory sheet to the person for whom this property was taken. And they also have to send one back to the law enforcement agency. So do you think they were trying to mitigate the risk by having that guy show up with the gloves on and going to the mailbox and collecting all the mail? I don't know. Is it possible? Anything's possible. I'm not saying that happened. I definitely saw it happen. And I definitely know what the rules are. And I definitely know that the court followed the rules. So, there you go. All right. So now, what are the timing requirements? Again, once they obtain the warrant to search one blue Honda CRV, from the date of the issuance, they have 5 days to execute that warrant. Now that warrant, the initial one with the detective's information, who swore under oath what they were going to do, the court can say, okay, well, do you need 10 days? And that detective could say, yes, I do. Now, mind you, this is a new detective. So we don't know how many days they had it initially in terms of how much the extension. We'll find out, because at some point under a FOIA, those records have to be released, especially if the family's been cleared. A good media attorney, they'll have to show cause to not release it in the public square. And so if, let's say, they get the extension, now they have 10 days. Well, once it's executed, i.e. you start searching that car, you have 3 days to return it, the receipt, back to the court. So at the most, you could have 13 days, 2 weeks, maybe. But what's interesting in this case is they held the car, and I was the first one on the internet saying, why are they holding this car? Well, first of all, why'd they impound this car? There has to be more to this picture. Because what I would have done, and what we've done on many cases, even in the Fruitland case, we went and bought the car that Stacy Wanderer sold. Chief Huff went and found it in the Lexus, and we bought it. And it was sitting in evidence. It's there now. But if that timing had expired, meaning they didn't execute everything within that 10-day time frame, the warrant becomes null and void. Absolutely zero. And everything that was seized, it would have been seized after that expiration of the warrant. Anybody with a law degree knows that would be fruit of the poisonous tree, and it would probably be suppressed in the people's case in chief, and it would never come into court. So in this situation, we know that it must have been successful, because what they did with that car is they threw all the parts into the car after tearing it apart. And this is where I, again, thought, well, that's really interesting that they released the car. Because you know what they haven't released
is coming from
is the evidence inside this house.
So I don't know if they're going into every room or if there's certain rooms that they're focused on. But this is Annie Guthrie's house, Savannah's sister, Nancy's other daughter. She lived here with her husband. We've seen police here before.
Okay, so here's a question. You guys tell me what you think. Why in the world are they at the reporting party's house when Nancy Guthrie was abducted out of her house? I get the fact that there's an Uber that took her over there, but that's a secondary problem. And you don't spend over 3 hours at the reporting party's house to prove that she was in the house having dinner. What's the relevance to that in the court? Do you not believe the reporting party that she was over there? Do you not believe the Uber driver that she was over there having dinner? That would be the relevance. And that's where you would go and want to search that house. But why would you bring an alternate light source? Unless you thought there was some type of forensic fluids. And why would you walk out of the house with a bag, which, by the way, you also have to leave a receipt? You also have to leave a receipt when you download everything on the phones, i.e., when the ICAC team showed up with the UFED. You got to leave a receipt for that too. So everything, there's a paper trail. Absolutely everything 100% has a paper trail. And there's a reason for that. It's called the chain of custody. If that chain of custody is broken in any way, shape, or form, then the defense has a window in. They have a window in. So let me explain how the proper chain of custody would have gone. And it starts with a report incident number. And the reason for that is it links every item and every report to a single flow in the investigation. A lot of people forget that is the very first step in the chain of custody. You go to records or you get on the radio and you ask dispatch, I need a DR, department report number, or a case number, and a CAD system chain of custody. So everything tied to this case goes back to the original radio call of the very first deputy who arrived on that scene. That CAD incident number was also given a case number. Now, once that's done, everything that's done, every item, every unique, descriptive, situation, i.e., if you're taking IDs or you're writing, reports or whatever, everybody connects it to that department report number. 100%. Because that identifies the exact objects and who was collecting them, i.e., and who you're interviewing, et cetera. It's all connected back. Every officer responding, now that radio traffic is being tracked. 100%. Okay? 100%. The elephant in the room is if you don't do any of that, you don't leave a receipt, you don't, track the chain of custody, then it's no bueno. It's not good. And the defense, again, has a way in. So now the third element of this is what we would call the metadata on this, the date, the time, and the locations of where these things were seized, were taken into custody and were seized. That establishes for the courtroom a starting point. But more importantly, an exact starting point. And then the next piece of this is the very first officer on the scene, like I talked to you about, where you go back to the CAD and you find out, well, who responded? Did Earl respond? And if so, what's his call sign? What's his badge number? And is it in the CAD system, the computer aided dispatch system? That's that little system in front of these amazing dispatchers who save thousands of lives. Everybody that gets on the radio and says, I'm en route to this call, now that information goes into the CAD, and all of this is tracking that call sign now. So if he's, one nonads, to station C, go ahead, one nonads, I'm en route. Now that one nonads goes into the CAD and it starts tracking what he was doing. So when we hear the radio traffic of him saying on the tape, at least it sounds like him. I don't know. We really don't know if it's him for sure, but it sure does sound like mumbles. Sheriff, does it sound like you?
Know all the things we know, and we still need to know what you know, because there's something out there that we don't know.
Yeah, but it sounds like Earl. So once all of this information now starts tracking, okay, this is the chain of custody. It's not just taking bags out of a house. It's not taking cars and putting them up on tow trucks or taking Nancy's car and impound it. It's none of that. And ICAC means Internet Crimes Against Children. I saw that going by here. Okay. So, and again, I've had a problem with that one too. I said that earlier on, and the sheriff was, mumbles. All right. So now the next piece of this, the next big piece of this for physical evidence is packaging and sealing. You have to put your name, your ID number, your badge number on every piece of evidence, time that you seized it. And you'll notice when they put the Range Rover, before they put it up, they put a seal on the car, and you saw the FBI guy from the evidence response team writing on that seal. That's part of this chain of custody. They had to do the same thing with Nancy's car, and they had to do the same thing with the RP's car. The reason for that is once they get this back into a secured evidence facility, the very first picture they're going to take is going to be of that seal and show the jury that seal was never broken, i.e. the chain of custody had never been broken. So that's important to understand. And now that shows the integrity of not only the investigation, but the integrity of all the measurements and ways that the agency went out of their way to make sure that none of this was going to be compromised in any way, shape, or form. Now the really interesting stuff. All right. It's sitting now at a evidence facility. So let's just use a case example. Oh, here's one. So you get a search warrant for one blue Honda CRV, and it was seized on the 6th, and this would be the chain of custody, and the location was Pima County, and of course it would be more specific than that. The agency, Pima County Sheriff's Office, and what would have been the reason? Why do you seize this one blue Honda CRV? Well, Your Honor, we're looking to process it. We're looking for DNA. We're looking electronic data. We're looking for prints. We're looking for bushes. We're looking for dirt, all the other stuff. Okay. You want to put it into evidence? Absolutely, Your Honor. Unless somebody says, let it go. Unless somebody says, well, we have publicly cleared the family, which all these things fit. All of these things fit. The sheriff has come out and said they've publicly cleared the family. And so somebody said, well, can we get our car back? Well, there's a way of doing that. And these are the policies and procedures of how you do that. And who would have done that? And why they would have done that. So there are two policies and procedures that every every sheriff in Pima County has to follow. And it's under Arizona Penal Code Section 283511. And the one on the left is the evidence vehicles that were impounded for evidence. Okay. Now, the reason I know the car is the same one is because we went to the dealership, Karen and I, and we actually talked to the dealership. I mean, those of you who are just joining us, you're late. We have already confirmed all this stuff. We did it when we were in Tucson. In fact, I have a video about it. You can go watch it. But here is the criteria for a vehicle to be a piece of evidence. They impound the vehicle when the vehicle is the instrumentality of a crime or other evidence and processing is needed. Do you think bullet number 1 fits in this scenario? In my opinion, I would submit to you that bullet number 1 fits. Now we go bullet number 2, including homicides, kidnappings, and other crimes with supervisor approval. All right, well, we have right there the crime of kidnapping. But here's the kicker. You have to go to your supervisor and say, I'm going to impound this car. And we talked about that the other night with John, where I said, something's not lining up here. I need to get this car. Here's the interesting part. The sergeant that you would go talk to is the same individual who was already reprimanded for screwing up other homicides by releasing evidence early. And by the way, they just promoted him. You can't make this up. So he was the guy the next morning where the sheriff said, hey, be good to everybody here because he's been up all night. Well, apparently he's been Sergeant Stivers. Apparently he's not only been up all night, apparently he's been missing a lot of sleep because he did this before. And it sounds like, hey, you're incompetent, so you're now a lieutenant. We're going to promote you. So loyalty trumps incompetency. And now once the supervisor says, yeah, impound it, it now goes to the secured lot, which is this picture right here at the sheriff's department, the impound lot, where the forensics unit is notified. And in an evidence vehicle, there's no fixed date of how long you can hold it. You can hold it as long as it's evidence, i.e. the house in Coburger. They had to get the defense to sign off. They had to get the prosecution to sign off, which I still think to this day, the elevator wasn't going to the top floor on that one either. But what do I know? The only thing that would change is in a 20-day rule would be the next side over here, the administrative impound. And once you release control, if you now want that vehicle released, there's only two ways that can happen. You have to either A, get hold of the case detective. Simultaneously, you have to get the DA and the prosecutor to sign off. They don't want that car anymore. Now, that's really interesting because if the U.S. Attorney's Office gets involved in any way, shape, or form, which apparently there is no way they would have released that car. You notice the FBI hasn't come out and said, or the U.S. Attorney's Office hasn't come out and said, everybody's clear, everybody's back in. Everybody's clear, everybody's back in. And they even give you the phone number to call for the policies and procedures at the evidence facility. And you have to ask for the detective and or the records manager who will forward you to the right people. Now, if we contrast that with something they're not going to keep as evidence, and by the way, somebody released this car from the evidence facility. Now, what does that mean? That means somebody had to transfer the evidence in the chain of custody. Don't forget this piece. Somebody had to sign the chain of custody form. Who, when, why was this car released? Why is this information important? Well, first of all, you just don't impound cars because there's a whole court procedure. And second of all, you don't impound cars if you believe the nature of the story being told to you. Somebody did not believe what they were being told. Kind of like Savannah when she says, well, I'm calling all the hospitals. And somebody probably made some phone calls after looking at the receipts that were left, i.e., they got one in the mail that said, hey, we have all of this stuff from your car. And next thing you know it, the lines of communication are shut down. Nobody's talking. Nobody's saying anything. So I am positive that the sheriff said the family's been cleared. And if so, I'm sure they're going to have a press conference and show the receipt. Show the receipts, for lack of a better term. And that way, or the sheriff can show the receipt, the search warrant receipt. Because, I mean, he hasn't done it with Luke either, or Carlos. But he keeps saying, well, you know, nobody's cleared. They're off the hook. They're not off the hook. But we did it under a search warrant. You notice he said that about that case or that, you know, some person being detained there, the Luke Daly situation. He said, well, you know, we had a search warrant. We went in. Well, guess what? He did this too under this car. So I'm sure he's going to talk about that. And I'm sure you journalists in the mainstream media are going to ask him about it, right? Because I'm asking him about it here on YouTube. Sheriff, you're going to show the receipts, right?
Know all the things we know, and we still need to know what you know, because there's something out there that we don't know.
Correct. I figured that. was going to be your answer, because here's the big problem here. You can't release anything until lab results or those types of things start coming back. And we know those are situations that we definitely know that's Nancy's blood. We definitely know on the porch that's Nancy's blood. What we don't know is the scientific reports and the documentation, if any, that came out of the alternate light source and or the photographs and or the powder or all the things. We used to call it red wop, which is, a certain powder spelled backwards. We don't know what those items were that were collected, not only in the car, but in the house. We don't know, but we definitely know that they came walking out of that house with bags of evidence and a table. And the table was brought in to probably put the cameras and items up on top of there, okay? Because everybody saw it happen. This is one of the evidence people leaving. Well, what did they leave with? I don't know. Let's ask Brian.
Yeah, I was here earlier last week. And then there was the day that the federal agents were here and went in with the ring light and the tripod when they made the first video, when Savannah and her siblings made the first video. Though we don't think that anybody's staying here now. Like Savannah and Annie and Annie's husband, I think, are all gone because it's been quiet here for like the last day or so.
Okay, so also that resolves the question of where the videos were filmed. Brian saw the FBI go in with a tripod. But the point being for this show tonight, the conversation about what was brought out of that house is sitting on a piece of paper that has been returned to the reporting party. And how do we know that? Because every item that was checked out, i.e. the car, from the evidence facility, from this evidence facility, and that's their sign right there on the right, you have to have a reason to do that. And it's not just, well, they've been cleared. You could have been ordered to do it. Kind of like Navarro just did, where that detective recently was suspended for failing to follow an unlawful order. Kind of like when people were arrested and now the 911 calls are being played that people from Canada or out of the country were swatting the Pima County Sheriff's Office about people. Well, when an officer was told, well, you're going to make the arrest, and that officer goes, well, I'm not doing that. And he puts it in his report, and then the DA reads that and goes, well, I don't know about this. We're not filing these things. And then you set up somebody, whether you like the person or not. I don't have any problems with people. But you can't set somebody up for an arrest. That's called entrapment, based on a bunch of no-named people from Canada or Texas or Mississippi. A lot of those calls, that's where they were coming from. They weren't even coming from the neighbors. You can't do that. I've never done that. And, I've been around a couple of weekends. So the only other way you could release that car is if it fell under this statute, 283511. And you can only hold it for 20 days. And Those situations are a DUI, a suspended driver's license, and every single day that car is in there, there is a $150 administration fee, or excuse me, an admin fee, a towing fee, and a $25 a day storage fee. Do you think the sheriff's department towed the RP's car and then charged him? No. And that's why the left column is in play here. And that's why I think a phone call was made, maybe a box of donuts were brought, and said, you get that car back to the family. And they said, okay. And they pushed it to the Chevy dealer, and the Chevy dealer reassembled it. However, all the evidence that they collected out of it was written on a piece of paper, given back to the court, and sent to the family. And now all the lawyers, if there are any, can look at this and go, holy crap, why'd they take this? Why'd they take that? But I'm sure they're going to tell us what this search warrant receipt says. In fact, they have to, right? I mean, wouldn't you think? You know, everybody's looking for mom. And of course, you know, we're part of the problem trying to connect the dots to help. You know, we certainly don't want anybody not helping. The P&E Property and Evidence Unit, this is their role, to handle all law enforcement property and evidence, and they're located right there. You can get a phone call to them. They also handle all the chain of custody. All items documented in property and proper evidence control forms. They tag it and bag it. Remember what we talked about? It has to be logged and it has to be tracked. And in fact, there's systems called evidence.com that everything goes into, including body camera. Including body camera. And it has strict access control, because the first question the defense attorney is going to ask, Sheriff, did you authorize the release of this vehicle?
Know all the things we know, and we still need to know what you know, because there's something out there that we don't know.
And Sergeant Stivers, now Lieutenant, you've destroyed a couple scenes before. Did you authorize it? He can answer. And then the third will be the lead detective. Detective, did you authorize and did you know the car was going to be released? Every single one of these questions will be asked in a court of law. Every single question. And you know, what's interesting is this isn't speculation. I have a 90% solvability rate working well over 300 plus murders. I'm just wondering how many the trolls have. Oh, wait a minute. Let me check. Let me ask the sheriff.
Know all the things we know, and we still need to know what you know, because there's something out there that we don't know.
Yeah, actually nothing. You don't know anything. So thanks for visiting. And so that release decision is going to be huge. It's going to be absolutely huge, because the prosecutor had to be involved in that decision as well, unless they didn't know that it was going to happen. Unless they didn't know. the deputy county attorney had to be consulted to release a vehicle. So they must have made a decision collectively to release that car. Because if they didn't do that, it would be sitting as an item number, which they have. They had to put it in as an item number into the evidence system. So what are the key takeaways here? This receipt is mandatory. It's mandatory. And a detailed itemized receipt must be given or left at the place of seizure, either a home or a vehicle. So guess what? They have it. We used to have to leave the first couple of paragraphs of the search warrant, not the probable cause side, just the things we were looking for. In Arizona, there's a strict timeline. It has to be within 5 days, and it has to be returned within 3 court business days. That inventory is required. A verification of a written inventory must accompany the return of the warrant, meaning you have to also bring it back to the court, and you have to put your hand up again. And the judge is going to swear you in again and say, hey, are you telling me under oath that the items on this sheet are the items you seized out of that car? Yes, Your Honor. All right. And now, if in Pima County, one little difference, like we talked about the administrative side of this, is they can treat a vehicle held as evidence differently from administrative impounds. They're separate. They're separate, 2 different ways of seeing how a car is impounded in Pima County. Remember, the administrative impounds, there are a bunch of fees that go along with it. An evidence impound, those fees and all of that stuff is waived, and there's no fixed time to release that car of 20 days. Okay? None. So now, why is that important? Back to the initial investigation. Between February 1st and February 7th, which is this day.
But the timing is just interesting. Like, why would they come tonight so late to just start doing this? I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, so I just wanted to give you guys a little update. I'm going to stay here, obviously.
So even Brian was going, why are they there on February 7th? Within that time frame, that 6 days, that car was being processed. And they had 5 days to do it. Once that 5 days was up, they had to get this back to the court. And guess what they didn't do? Because now they had an extra 15 days. They did not return the car to the family. It wasn't until folks started hearing about people questioning the car and questioning this that somebody changed their mind and returned the vehicle, because we found the car and we found the dealership and we talked to the service manager. And that's where the RP takes their car for their service all the time. And that in and of itself started to deepen this mystery, wouldn't you think? Or wouldn't you say, right, in the chat? What do you think? Because even Brian, while standing out in front, after 3 hours, they were in that house. Even he was confused with what's going on. And you'll notice that was a sheriff. It wasn't the FBI. Because their search warrant for the car was through the Pima County Superior Court. They had consent to go into the house. But you're right. This was a very interesting timing because it was right after the Kalal arrest in LA. Now, I want to point something else out to you. This is an early shot of tire tracks on the driveway. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner is another mat going into the casita. I pointed this out recently as well. I don't know if any of these tire impressions were collected and processed. I've not seen any video about the authorities. I've seen a lot of video of cars driving up and down, even law enforcement vehicles. But I've not seen any vehicle, or excuse me, any impressions, tire impressions that were collected, measurements, none of that on these very obvious tire impressions right here. That would have been really important information. It would have been very important to have these tire impressions because you can clearly see if you line it up with Nancy's car in the driveway, it could have been hers. And if it's hers, then that causes all kinds of questions or creates all kinds of questions. If they're not hers, then whose are they? This picture is important because if you go between the Duraflame and the broom, if you go straight back to that wall, you can clearly see there's an 8-inch slab, at least an 8-inch slab. And so we also know that Nancy had to navigate getting up over that slab into her house to the garage door if she went into the garage door. But what we don't know, we know that this garage door allegedly went up at 9:48 and then came down at 9:50. But we don't have any other data points of whether this garage was ever opened again. And I've been curious about that. I've been very curious about that. Because you would think if you're calling the cops and you're looking for your mother, that you're opening up every cabinet, every door, everything. We also know that there is a keypad outside. So was the keypad utilized? And if so, who opened it? Was there a clicker? Was there an app, like the Q app? How did we get the data point of 9:48? Let's not forget to ask that question. Now you can clearly see also there is another mat in the garage in front of the door. And if you look at those tire tracks, because I tried doing that, they're off center of this car. Nancy's car. This is Nancy's car. It's not the Honda CRV. The CRV belongs to the family, the reporting party. And if you see that mat there, again, that's another one. And These are the evidence people from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But clearly, you can see those tire tracks here. You can also see the second mat out in front of the casita. Interesting, don't you think? I think so. Let me get to your questions. Now, the takeaways. I'm hoping that the search warrant receipt will be released and that we'll be able to see at some point, or somebody will be able to FOIA, get that information. I'll bet you it'll be a YouTuber. Just saying. And they'll get it, and it will conflict with the narrative. Again, we still have time to get rid of the sheriff by sending an email to the AG's office. I think they're going to make the decision next week. I was told 2 weeks, but I'll find out tomorrow. I'll make some more phone calls. I've been told 2 different things, that they're still deciding. Somebody had said the email bounced. Other people said it didn't bounce. Either way, just give it a shot. Send it up there. Because the important piece of this is when we see if they do it, then everybody else goes with him. The guy that just got promoted to lieutenant, I'm sure he'll retire. The, no nads, he's gone. The deputy chief that had to change his name, like Houdini, I'll call him Cousin Eddie. And then you have, obviously, this Navarro guy, he's got to go, the captain, over criminal investigations. This was not, all these mistakes could have been avoided. And by the way, I think there's like 5 or 6 mats, I counted them all, that were never picked up. And so if we think about, let's hypothesize. Now, this is a hypothesis and a speculation. Let's think about Porch Guy having an accomplice, which I've said more than one. There's more than one person involved here. Let's say you got a driver, because you've got to know that neighborhood. You have to know that neighborhood. I drove into that neighborhood with Karen, and we were like, no way. It's like a bowl of spaghetti, as it was described to us, flipped upside down, because that's where all the roads are. It's so confusing unless you know. So the perpetrator had to know that address for Nancy Guthrie. They had to know. That's my impression, because unless you drive up in there, how are you going to know? Why not that house? Why not this house? Why not that house? It's that confusing. But once you're up there, then you know. So I think Porch Guy has a driver. I'm going to also throw out a theory. Notice we haven't heard how they got into the house, other than the doors were propped open, and there's a whole bunch of assumptions floating around on the internet that, because the sheriff said, well, we're not talking about how they got in. Why not? Why are you not talking about the RP getting into the house, how they got in? Don't you think that would be important information for the public to go, well, why'd the suspect A, B, C, or D leave the door open? We already know that the medical event probably didn't happen, because rule number one is if you're having a medical event and you're 84 years old and you're home alone at 2:30 in the morning, the first thing you do is pick up the phone and call 911 on yourself. Hi, I'm Nancy Guthrie. And the dispatcher is going to say, okay, where do you live? What's your address? Yada, yada. I'm having a heart issue or I'm having a health issue or whatever the deal is. All right, ma'am, we're on our way. And you know the next question they're going to ask? Ma'am, how do we get into the house? Can you make it to the door? No, I'm having a medical issue. Okay, well, can you prop the door open for us? Are your your doors are open? They're all open? Yes. Okay, well, we're on our way. I don't think that happened. I don't know. Call me skeptical. Sheriff, what do you think?
Know all the things we know, and we still need to know what you know, because there's something out there that we don't know.
I agree. So common sense would tell you that probably didn't happen. So that narrative was created early on by the reporting party. Let's just admit it, because the reporting party told the other family member that, hey, we thought it was a medical event, all within 7 minutes. All within 7 minutes. And then that person said, well, did you call the hospitals? And Savannah said, well, I'm calling all the hospitals. And then you have the sheriff on the radio traffic going, can you check all the hospitals? So hospitals were being checked. But that probably took less than an hour, maybe. And what time did Savannah get home after hanging out with Carson in the afternoon? So if we look at a 2-hour difference, if she's on the East Coast, let's say it's 3:00 and she gets home at 5 with Carson. So that means she got a phone call from Annie around 3-ish. Well, that's 3 hours into this thing. And by then, they already knew that this wasn't a medical event. I don't know. That's not lining up for me. It may line up for you. And so from that point, you go, okay, then what time did you get over here? And at first they may have said 11 because that's what the sheriff said, 11-ish, 11:15-ish. Okay, fine. And then that later changed to 11:56. Did that change because of a conversation? Did that change how and why? Because again, that's a long time. So let's say porch guy is doing some surveillance a couple of weeks earlier on that house. i.e., we're looking for video from this time frame, I think it was February, whatever it was, or January 11th forward. So they have some type of metadata that's telling them that, look, we got to go back and we got to start looking for vehicles coming into the arena here. The reason for that, it's much easier to find a car than it is a body. But here's an interesting point. What if they already found the car? And they're trying to put that car moving into that neighborhood back to that January 11th date. And because when you see how cool this guy is on the porch, and let's throw the hypothesis. I'm hearing people talk about the cartels and all this other stuff. That is a huge risk to, to show up and say, okay, we're going to snatch an 84-year-old woman out of a house and kind of, because it's Savannah Guthrie's mom. And then apologize if the notes are legit, which I think is noise still. Could they be connected as an afterthought, as part of a bigger plan? Yeah, I could run with that. But I don't see, home fries, Spooky or Casper, kicking it and going, hey, Holmes, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and fire off the ransom notes now. Okay. All right, Vato, let's go, man. Orale. And they kick them off, right? Because they're the cartels. Sinaloa, right across the border. Okay. Hey, what do we do with her now? Hey, Chato, what do we do, homie? Oh, just put her in the car and drive her over. Okay. Hey, is Chica there? Yeah. Okay. We're going to drop her off, homie. Okay. And she's going to take care of it. Right. All right. Orderly. And they drop her off. And now, the feminine side of the lady goes, well, dear Guthrie family, there's nothing you could have done. Sign the cartels. Not buying it. Coming from an agency in Southern California, 30 miles from the border, San Diego County, 2 million people, we dealt with that all day. Those vatos down there, they would have cut her up and left her in all different places because it's too many problems with their billion-dollar industry. There is no way they're going to say, hey, I got an idea. What's that? Let's go steal, let's go kidnap an 84-year-old woman that belongs to Savannah Guthrie, because it's America's, grandmother. I don't know. Could I be wrong? I've been wrong before. Do I think I am on this one? I don't know. I'm going to lean into it and probably say, no, they're not going to tie themselves up into this. So now then we go back to this other problem with, home fries here, porch guy. He's up on the porch and now he's acting like, well, okay, I guess I should pull the weeds out and take the Nest camera down. It almost feels like, and action. He's got his, I'm looking good. I got my Walmart, You ever seen that? You ever seen the guy, Creeper? He's hysterical. That Vato from LA, that guy is hysterical. Okay. Where he does, the Creeper exercise. You got to go look him up. And he goes around, he's a comedian. He goes around and he does all the cool stuff. One of my old partners I just saw recently, his name is Johnny Diaz. And he'd always be like, hey, do the Vato. And so that's where my little voice came from. My old partner was Diaz. You don't get much more Hispanic than that. And Joe Sepulveda back in the day. But I don't see this happening. And so anyway, you got this guy up on the porch and, he's got his Walmart collection, to kidnap. He's got his new shoes. He's got a new clothes. I got a new backpack. I got a gun. I don't know how to use it because, it's the the cartel carry and all this other stuff. But I figure I'll just go ahead and throw on a couple of, gloves here, like 4 pair or 2 pair, 3 pair, so I can't you pull the trigger because I can't get it out. I can't my gloves are too big. Well, why didn't you just wear the bozo shoes as well? You know, you have the same result. But what if Home Fries is pulled up with another guy, the driver, and the driver says, and this is where just my own thinking. Here's a key. You're in. Sheriff, how'd the family get in? We're not going to talk about that. Why not?
Know all the things we know, and we still need to know what you know, because there's something out there that we don't know.
Okay. I have a hypothesis as a former homicide guy. What if the suspect had access to the house? That's interesting. I don't know if we've talked about that. Could that be a possibility? I don't know. What did they find in the house? They found her phone. They found her wallet. They found her cane. They found her purse. No 84-year-old woman leaves her house without her purse, ever. We know that the watch allegedly was down by, on the floor at the bottom of the bed. What if there was some item that the suspect brought in and the suspect forgot to take it out? Or it was collected the next morning? Just saying. Is that possible? Maybe they're looking for that. I don't know. I've had weirder things happen in cases where you just go, wow, okay, that's something we got to consider. We got to think through this. Because this guy going up to the front porch and, pulling the weeds out and all this other stuff, has that made any sense to anybody? Okay. Ever? I don't know. And the Mexican connection to this thing, being at the border down there, I'm telling you that there is just so much risk cutting through that border checkpoint to get to the other side. It's easy to do. That's a no-brainer, but there's cameras on every side. And by now they would have found those cars, because if they have cars going in and out of that neighborhood, which they do, by the way, I would put money on it. There's a system called BriefCam, BRIEFCAM. They were recently bought, but it's the same company that counted all the rounds from the Las Vegas shooting. Remember that guy up there on the 30th floor shooting down at Jason Aldean at the concert? They counted every single round from that software. It's called BriefCam. And you can put the parameters of, I'm looking for white cars coming in and out of this neighborhood. And you can put it through a couple other systems that they have out there, and I know they have them. And within an hour, you can have every white car that you're looking for. So we don't know if they already have that data, that information. They may be looking for more information to see it coming and going, because I think this individual, once they got her out of the house, and let's say a vehicle is involved, you got to move her. Where are you going to put her? Well, if this is a complicated situation, do you already have a predestined post-incident behavior? Do you have a secondary location? If it was the cartels, they would have had that all lined up. They wouldn't have just pulled the trigger on this and not have a place to take her. Because if you're, quote, going to hold her and you have 7 days, you got 7 days to respond, which I also think was kind of nutty. Never seen that happen before. The cartels are going to say, hey, we got your mom and you got 7 days to find us. That's a Kalila move. Did you get the Bitcoin yet? That took about a day. And so, they're not going to put her in a stash house. No, this would have been one of these. We've got your mom. You've got 24 hours, or mom's gone. There's nothing you can do. I'll be back in contact. Done. And plus, you're not sending a letter to TMZ, for the entertainment value. Hi, we're the Sinaloa cartel. Is this TMZ? Yeah. Well, I've got a news tip. What's that? Well, Casper has Miss Guthrie. Really? Where is she? Well, I got to ask Homie first before I release this information. They don't need $4 to $6 million. Are you kidding me? They'd probably hire a public relations firm to get their name out of this. They have rules. Amateurs don't have rules. And this is an amateur playing this game. An amateur with a little sophistication, not much. I think Dr. Picato's been on target here. You've got the waiters on the porch, the waiter on the porch, but the chef may be driving the car, and the other waiter may be in the back somewhere. It wouldn't surprise me if there was even, a predestined location that they were going to take her, and in terms of, maybe just a safe house for just a minute. But to make it sound like they're out of Tucson and they're going to bring her back to Tucson. What is this, a delivery service too? Hardened criminals don't act that way. It just doesn't make sense. And so that just keeps you closer to the house and closer to the neighborhood. And I think that's why the feds are going back now, which I've been saying for 7 months. People have asked, where would you start? I said, I wouldn't leave the house yet. Stay in the neighborhood. Something's there. Something is there. And I don't know what that something is. I have no idea. A lot of theories, a secondary house and all this other stuff. The jeweler next door, yada, yada. Well, I can tell you this, Nancy's not there. And so let's start looking for the car. We find the car, you find Nancy Guthrie. It's that simple. And why I say that is because you can process vehicles and you can see if there's video coming and going into that neighborhood. And that's where you start. And you work it that way. You build the frame, the picture frame. Just like my surfing picture here that says action. Do what is right, not what is easy. Just make it happen and go for it. All right, let me grab some of your comments. And thank you so much, everybody, for your comments here. Let me read your questions. Thank you. I'm looking for a YouTuber has a copy of the search warrant for Carlos. Awesome. I can't wait. I want to read that. We've got a FOIA in as well. If this case goes cold, does that mean search warrants, 9/11 phone call, and Guthrie body cam footage will never be released? It is possible, Max. Yes, they could tuck this stuff into the freezer, which is why it's important for the family to have a press conference and tell us how satisfied they are with the sheriff, and why it's important to email the AG again. Okay. Lee has a comment. I wonder if there was never a subscription for the Google camera, or if the subscription had been recently canceled. If so, who canceled it? Excellent question. Excellent comment. Right? You would wonder. Parker. Oh, I'm picking up what Chris is putting down. Thank you. Yeah. Don't you like the nickname Earl from Napoleon Dynamite. If you've not seen Napoleon Dynamite, one of my all-time favorite cult films, right? It's hysterical. And Earl, I love that part where they're drinking, the water with the egg in it after cleaning all the chicken coops, and he pays them in coins, pennies. Where he goes, "Hope you don't mind," and then Earl, that's Nanos. That's his new nickname, Earl. LD put over 600 miles on that SUV. He had a temp plate tool. He had the car before the incident. There you go. Okay, let's see what they pull on that. And by the way, you can't take him off the plate. I don't know. I'm not putting him on the plate. The sheriff has put him on the plate. He says nobody's in, nobody's out. Nobody's in, nobody's out. He also said that about the reporting parties. Nobody's in, nobody's out. Nobody's in, nobody's out. I don't know if he knows what a suspect looks like, to be honest with you, or a person of interest. You sure are impounding a lot of cars and getting search warrants, which takes probable cause. Unless you make it up. I don't know. 20-plus year officer here. Thank you for your service, sir. Crazy Yoda. This is a master class on evidence collection and recording. Case live and die on what he is saying. Case live and die on what he's saying. All first-year rookies better know it. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you for your service. Really appreciate you. Let's see here. Nanos thought he had the perp. He okayed release of N home. Couldn't find anything A&T. His last chance to save the face, that car, I think. To save the case, that car. You know what they can do? They can still go back and pull the body camera, study that body camera, and then get to interviewing. And when I say interviewing, you can have all the lawyers in the room, and at the very end, you say, "Thank you very much. Have a great day." And at every time the lawyer says, "Well, my client's going to take the fifth on that," you say, "That's fine. I'll go to the next question." And you just keep asking it 4 different ways. Remember, juries don't like lies. They hate it. That's an easy way to get convicted. The first driveway photo is interesting. Look at the tire marks just as they turn towards the garage. There are scuff marks. Let's do it. There it is. There are scuff marks. Could have been people doing something back the park vehicle driveway. Yeah, great observation. Absolutely. There's these marks. Everything is here. There's a lot of movement going right here. That's what you're talking about. Or it could be water runoff too, because if we look up here, this looks like water runoff, and the rains can hit this pretty hard, Beacon. But it could be exactly what you said as well. So good observation. Thank you for pointing that out. Most definitely. Hello from Louisiana. Thank you, Tim Cajun Adventures. Did you get the baby? How many king cakes have you got in the baby, brother? That's what I want to know. I did a case in Lake Charles, Louisiana, years ago, where they had some gals getting thrown to alligators back in the day. And then I had another caper down there, and that's the first time I ever ate alligator, and it tastes like a rubber ball. It was horrible. But you guys eat it all the time, I'm sure. But anyway, that's where I learned about king cakes, and they said, "You got to get the baby, man." And then I had to buy the next cake, right? Hello from Louisiana. Wouldn't we think one of the cameras in the house would have caught footage of Thomas dropping Miss Nancy off? That's a great point. You would think, right? Absolutely. I think they have more video. Don't you guys think they have more video somewhere? It's got to be more video. I think Kash Patel and the sheriff are going to go at it here, and then Patel's going to tweet out some more video, and then more phone calls will be made, more donuts will be brought down by the politicians. Could the probable cause to search the RP car and house have been based on DC's text to their phones? Kalelas. Please explain why or why not. Thank you. Best show in my opinion. Thank you, Blue Sloop. Not the cars. I don't think you could have tied in a narrative to a judge to say, okay, they got text messages that say they're waiting for the Bitcoin, so we need to search their car. Now, they could have tied it in to searching their phones because that was the instrument that received the text messages. And you can download those phones, through a program, as we all know, through Celebrite, and that you fed. And that's why the sheriff said the ICAC teams were there, because they had that device. They were the only ones available to do that. I'm not sure about that. But that could absolutely be the proper chain of custody for that day. Now, the other interesting thing, they could have gone in if they had consent, and let's say they signed a consent form, which it was my understanding that Annie and Tomasco had signed a consent form for the house. If they went in there with that UFED, they could have downloaded all of the devices inside that house, the computers, the laptops, the iPads, the telephones, and, boom, just plug it in. And we used to call plug and play. And it all drops down, and then there's software that you can utilize, and it will give you all the information that you need. And then you can give it, to companies like Celebrite. We saw that in the Brian Koberger case with Heather, where, they brought her in to analyze all the Koberger material. So, yeah. Let me go back up here. Porch Guy knew what happens to door cam lens when you put foliage over it. It focuses on the foliage and blurs and darkens the background. Okay? If he was there a couple of nights before, why didn't he know that then? I think you're right, but I'm thinking, why wouldn't he have known that when he was there potentially in that other picture or somebody else with him? It's almost like the Keystone Cops. Thank you, Karen and Chris, for all your amazing work. My sweetheart is behind the scenes tonight. She's working on something else. We'll push it out next week. But thank you for your kindness. Yes, I'm married so far up I can't see straight. Let's be honest. All right, I love that girl, Chris. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I could not concentrate tonight. You're on fire. Thank you. I don't know. When I get one-on-one with this brain, this 2-pound brain that the Lord gave me, sometimes it goes into different places. But I was always that guy, though. Cheryl's going to kill me. So Cheryl Tyner, one of our CSIs years ago, we had a case. It was a mutilation. And I was working and walking through the scene, and I see a turd in a toilet. And I said to her, hey, Cheryl, come here. And she's like, what? I said, come here, because they all knew when I asked for something, they were like, holy crap. No, not literally. Yeah, literally, I guess, in this case. I said, do me a favor. Would you do me a favor? And I do it just like this. I said, can I ask you a favor? She goes, what? I said, would you swab that turd right there in the toilet? She goes, oh, McDonough, why are you so gross? I said, I know, but can you do that for me? Now you have to understand something. This was in the bathroom, and I'm not going to be gross. Other than that, that's pretty gross. But this victim, this woman, had been mutilated. And there were things that the human spirit should not have been seeing. And I thought to myself, what if the suspect, during the height of this gratification, because it was an essay where he cut her up, What if he took a crap from the excitement? It was his. And I remember, the idea of when the lab report came back and reading it, it's a positive hit and it matched some of the other fluids. I remember listening years ago to somebody say, just do it, just check it, just in case. So I've always been that, one of those individuals that says, are all the doors locked? Yeah, hon. Okay. Can I check? Do you mind? And so for some reason, those are the kind of things, the minutia things like the air filters inside of that Honda, for an example. Did you, and I mentioned this before, did you know there's a filter behind the glove box? A lot of suspects forget this. Did you know that air filter could have captured pollen and all kinds of stuff if this was a body dump? Let's say they drove Nancy in a car and they pulled her out of that car and they just threw her in nature. She's with nature. And then they came back and they cleaned the whole car. Do you know you could take that air filter, throw it in a bag, send it to a laboratory, have a botanist pull it out and test for all the pollens, all the stuff, the dirt, the whole stuff, all that stuff, and then go to the crime scene and collect all that stuff. I had a caper, it was a body dump. Her name was Valisa Ray Joy. She was a lady of the evening. And I walked in to the interview and I let this guy lie. Those are great. That's great evidence. Just go, man. You're on. And action. I wasn't anywhere near that. And I dropped this report on him and I said, well, it's kind of weird because I actually got your car at the scene. And I handed it to him. And the suspect read it. Positive match, positive match, positive match, positive match. Can't exclude, can't exclude. And it's like, as Sheriff Nano says, not my first rodeo. Not my first rodeo. Guy's a clown. Get rid of him, Tucson, please, for your own sake. Let's see here. No 911 call released. Maybe there wasn't one. If someone had a direct contact phone call possible. That's a great question or a great comment. Yeah, we don't know, right? Chris, is it weird that tons of new cameras were installed after the fact? Absolutely. Yeah, right, Nordic? You certainly don't want to protect her. You do it when she's gone. That's a great comment. If Colella Googled and called A&T soon after the disappearance, how did he know their last name and spelling so soon? Well, and that's the other thing I've always wondered. Why Tommaso? He's not even on the radar in this thing. He's not in any of the videos, none of that. I don't know. That one was kind of interesting. I think they were taking her out the back door, and if it didn't work out, so porch guy went to the front to remove camera to get her out the front door. Okay, and once they got her out the front door, where were they going with her? Just from your thought process, right? What were they going to do with her? She can't even make it to the mailbox. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Thank you, Sherry. Wow. That is so kind. I hope everybody got one of these memberships. And by the way, YouTube assigns all the memberships. I don't have any control over that. All right, everybody. I've kept you here for 2 hours. Man, it just flew by tonight. I hope I was able to bring some value for everybody tonight, that I didn't lower your property value. During the closing here, I'll get to everybody else's super sticker and make sure we put it up there. But you know, I think we're in a critical time here where they can get the sheriff cooking, and simultaneously, I think if they're starting to circle back, that means they're starting to look at different things through different lenses. And that's a good thing. And we'll stay on it. You know, like Brian, he's a great journalist. But you see, and look at all the YouTubers. I love it. You know, I love it. They're all out there, and they're going to continue to do it. Stay the course, you know, continue to be kind to one another. And I will see you on the next one coming up. Aloha. Talk to you later. Continue to be akamai and take care of one another. And thank you to our law enforcement, first responders, to our firefighters, to our nurses, to our doctors, to our teachers, all those in the service industries out there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And more importantly, to our military, who's in harm's way right now, that they're giving us the opportunity to have this conversation with you. So God bless you all. And to all the families that are also waiting for their loved ones who are in harm's way, my prayers are with you. Aloha. Have a good night. See you soon.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii.
I'm always gonna lift you up. I'm always gonna fill your cup. I'm always gonna be there for you. I'll always show support. I'll always open your door. I'll always make time for you. Always, always, always for you. I'll always make you laugh. I'll always check your math. I'll always look out for you. I'm always gonna take the heat. I'm always gonna save you a seat. I'm always gonna keep it real with you. Always, always, always for you. Always means all the days. Even if things feel sideways. Thick or thin, it's not pretend. Got your back until the end. Even when the tide comes in and you're too tired I can swim. I'm always gonna bake you bread. I'm always gonna keep you fed. I'm always gonna take care of you. I'll always be your biggest fan. I'll always lend you a hand. I'll always show up for you. Always, 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 in every way, I will love you.
It's always been you, Jesus. It's always been you, Emmanuel. Who gave me this courage? What torch lights my feet? It's always been you, Jesus. It's always been you, Emmanuel. Who brings light to the morning? What flame lights my way home? It's always been you, Jesus. It's always been you, Emmanuel. I know I am loved so. Now I remember to see bright. It's always been you, Jesus. It's always been you, Emmanuel. It's always been you, Jesus. It's always been you, Emmanuel. Who saves me from trouble? Who can see me truly? It's always been you.